Welcome to Aligned with Kell, Quarrell, the podcast where we talk all things small business. It's a mix of mindset, empowerment, real conversations, and of course, alignment. I'm your host, Kell Quarrell, a businesswoman with close to 20 years of business experience. Get ready for a mix of solo deep dives and inspiring interviews with awesome guests who will share how they have aligned their businesses with the lives they love. Let's dive in to align your business with the life you've always wanted. Welcome to this week's episode of Aligned with Kell Quarrell. I am Kell, and today I am so excited to be joined by Heidi Warren, who is commercial lawyer and also the founder of Law by Design. So before Heidi was running her own law firm and raising 3 kids under 4, which we're going to talk about, Heidi had a pretty adventure-filled life. She and her husband moved to London primarily to travel around Europe. And whilst in the UK, Heidi worked for Price Waterhouse Cooper. So traveling and work became of equal importance. And then after returning to Australia and a not so brief stint of maternity leave and 3 kids later, Heidi started Law by Design with the mission to make legal services more accessible for small businesses, which I absolutely love. She's passionate about making sure every business, big or small, has access to quality legal assistance. So Heidi, thank you for being here. Welcome to Aligned with Kell Quarrell.
Thanks, Kell. Very happy to be here. It's a pleasure.
So before we dive into unpacking and really looking at why you started Law by Design, what I'd love to hear about a little bit is your experience with working for Price Waterhouse Cooper in the UK. What was that like, if you could put that in a bit of a nutshell?
Yeah, I mean, PwC is a bit of a dirty word in Australia at the moment after the recent scandal, but I never worked for the Australian firm, so a big caveat on that. And also, I mean, the English are very proper and everything was very properly done over there. So I think it was probably a little bit different. But ultimately, I loved it. I loved working for PwC. I was working right in the centre of London. I looked across the River Thames at the London Eye every day. It was like just a beautiful place to work. And it was actually... there was a lot of big egos there. There's a lot of very, very intelligent people and a lot of, people trying to make their mark in the world. But what I truly loved and it really touched me and inspired me were the amount of women that were, and working mums that were working in the firm that were really valued for still being a mum. They worked part-time. They could still be a partner. They could still be a director, and they were humans. And what I found quite different from my experience in the corporate world in Australia is women, and I don't want to paint a broad brush approach, and this was, my experience was going on 10 years ago as well, so things have changed a lot, but there's definitely was a certain element of dog eat dog, and I'm made my way up the ranks very difficultly, this is the mentality, to become a senior leader as a female. So I'm going to then make that, path difficult for other women, which it really didn't resonate with me. I found really hard to kind of deal with when I was younger. I just didn't understand it. But then I also thought, well, that's just the way of the world. Then I left Australia and I left the corporate environment in Australia, went to the UK, and it couldn't be any more different. Every woman that I worked with there was just kind, caring, loving. They were really individual. They let their personalities show. They were happy to talk about their kids and the struggles of balancing work and life, because it's still a struggle regardless. It's just that kind of the respect for women, and that women showed other women in the UK and PwC in particular was just really inspiring and eye-opening for me. So from that reason alone, I loved it. I really liked the work that I did. I did a lot of contracts and I did a lot of software launches and IT law. So I was working on interesting stuff, working against really big corporations.
Mhm.
But what the area that really, really resonated with me was working with the small business in the startup space. So PwC largely works with big clients, but they have realised that, well, there's actually quite a lot of money to be made in the startup space, and there's all these unicorns coming out. So they had a team dedicated to trying to foster the startups, and I worked with that team and helping those businesses, and I just loved that because all of a sudden you're not working against or with someone that's just another number in another giant organization. You're working with the business owner, the
Mm.
decision maker, the person that's really passionate about their job, really passionate about their business. They are making the decisions. They don't have to run it up a huge corporate chain to get something agreed. But ultimately, and what I've taken into my business now is I feel like I'm actually helping people and individuals. And yeah, they're running a business, but at the end of the day, it's a people centered firm that I have, and I'm connecting on an individual level rather than just having a corporate transaction with somebody,
Yes.
which is fine. But I take a lot of, I don't know, energy. I take a lot of energy and inspiration from working with businesses and the decision makers. So
I love
to
that.
answer your question, yes, loved PwC.
I just want to go back. Can you pinpoint the difference between why women were far more celebrated and perhaps it was more on an equal level over there in the UK than in Australia? Do you think it did it come from the top? Did it come from the women themselves? I'm just really interested around why you felt a significant difference between there and here.
Yeah, I think the UK generally is just a bit more of a sophisticated market,
Hmm.
and on a lot of levels. I just think that they're ahead of the curve, or ahead of Australia at least, in a lot of things. Like, I love Australia. Obviously, I'm back in Australia. I'm passionate about Australia, so I don't want to rag on it.
Yes.
And I think we will be where the UK is, in another 10 years. And I really noticed a difference coming back now, very different from 10 years ago and, or 15 years ago when I was a junior lawyer as well. So times are changing here. I just think the times in the UK changed quicker.
Yes.
When I was there was a heap of exposure in the media about equal pay. Corporations, any listed corporation had to report on its pay, the gender pay gap,
Hmm.
and it was bandied about in the media like nobody's business. So it was really like kind of shaming really big companies if they didn't have women on boards, if they didn't have women getting equal pay. So I think they were more proactive
Yep.
than we
Just a
were.
little further ahead than where we are
Yeah,
right now.
but I,
Yeah.
I think we're catching up. And I also think now that women, especially like people my age, well, we went through that kind of the grind of not really feeling valued as a young female in business life. And we now are like, well, I don't want to do that to other women. I don't
Yes.
like that's not the ethos that I have. So I think there's just a general shift also of, that wasn't okay. We're all moving in a better direction, and I just think there's much more of a sisterhood in the female business space now than there ever was.
Yes,
So
I agree. And I think it is going to be us that make the biggest change
yeah,
when we can really kind of embrace that collaboration over competition and,
yes.
just know that there is enough for everyone. And yeah, to be able to do that. So thank you. I really appreciate your insights into that. So let's dive into the reason that you obviously came back to Australia. You've had 3 children. And so you're navigating this work and life and mum and all of the things. But
Mm.
the driving force behind you starting Law by Design, and I'd really love to know about that. And probably how it's very different to what a lot of other firms do and how they operate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I spent my early years of my career working in big firms. And when I graduated law school, I thought that's what I wanted to be, this big corporate lawyer working in, big fancy buildings. And I did it and I was like, oh, this kind of sucks. You're just there to be billing the client. It's not really about winning for the client. It's about winning for the firm and about
Yes.
generating money for the firm. And I just didn't like that. And then I went in-house and I worked in-house for a hotel company on the Gold Coast called Wyndham for a number of years. And then I was in an in-house function at PwC as well. And you work so much more closely with the business and you can be a lot more commercial, and because lawyers are ultimately just worried about being sued. Everything we do, we bring back to, can I be sued on this? And that's not, in my mind, beneficial for the client. It's only our driving factor is, beneficial for us. And I just didn't like that. And I could see business people getting really frustrated with lawyers getting caught up in the law. And I got told, I remember for my first in-house job, the CEO, he asked me to look into something. I gave him this, 5-page dossier about the law, and I thought it was this amazing piece of legal advice. And he sat me down, looked me in the eye and told me the number one rule of being a lawyer in my business is don't get caught up in the law. And I just thought that was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard in my life. I'm like, that's what you pay me to do? Like, what are you talking about? But I realize now they don't, like, no one cares what the Corporations Act says. They just want to know, can I do it or not? And can I do it? I just want to know if I can do it. If there's a little bit of risk, okay, just tell me about it, but just tell me how I can do it. So that really shaped how I kind of try to give my advice now. I really, really try hard to just give, yes or no answers, or I'll give a paragraph explanation on something rather than a 10-page document, because I know clients, one, they don't want to read that. Two, they probably don't really understand it.
Correct.
Three, they certainly do not want to pay for that. So I'm very, very aware of that. As much as my insurer and the law society are not super happy about how I kind of push all their requirements to one side, I ultimately just want to deliver my clients advice that they want to receive.
Yes.
And something that isn't confusing, something they can understand, and also something quickly. Like you don't want to wait 3 weeks for an answer for something, because I've had to write a 10-page letter to justify my 4 paragraphs of response. So that's kind of that's how I approach my firm, by being kind of, like I said, people first, just understanding what the client wants and delivering on that.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, being in business now for close to 20 years myself, this aspect of business, this law side of business, is something that I know a lot of people, myself including, have gone into business and kind of just wanted to bury their head in the sand because of probably fear of not understanding what is going to be shared with them. Obviously, as you said, the cost that can be involved with getting the relevant contracts and terms and conditions and all of the things that we need in place. But I think a lot, and I'll speak probably from a woman in business, there has been that kind of level of being a woman in business and then speaking a whole other language, which is legal terminology, that there's that fear that we won't understand and we might be taken for granted and all of those things. And it just becomes something that feels very, very big, very, very heavy. And what I love with your response there is that you want to strip all that away and simply give your clients, which are probably a lot of small businesses, the answers that they need quickly and in the most cost-effective way, which I love. So when we go to your website, you have a full range of incredible templates that people can simply buy and utilize for themselves. This is something that I was not really aware of that was available. So talk me into that strategy of your law firm having ready-made templates, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. So I started out the firm knowing, oh, I wanted to focus on small businesses because they have been largely been ignored by traditional law firms. And also, like I said before, that's, I get a lot of personal energy and feedback by working in the small business space. So I knew that I wanted to do that, and to be an effective small business lawyer, you have to be affordable. I can't overcharge for things. No small business has a legal budget, let alone a big legal budget. So, and I'm very aware that no one likes spending money on lawyers, period. Even if you have a budget for it, it's not great. So I initially just set up my firm doing all my work on fixed fee. And I still do that now because I think it's important for the clients to know what things will cost in advance. They can budget them in. There's no like, oh, it might be between this amount and this amount. It is, I just, average it out. This is what it is. And, sometimes I win, sometimes I lose, but that's being in business. So I fix all my fees so we're clear for the clients. But after a while, maybe it was after a year or so, I realized even if I do have affordable fixed legal fees, there's still a whole lot of businesses that can't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
So I created these templates so that they were to try and bridge the gap between somebody going on to ChatGPT and writing themselves some terms, which, look, I use ChatGPT all the time. I'm a big user. I use AI in my firm. I've got different software. I'm a big advocate of technology, but it's also, there's a vast difference between somebody saying, write me some terms and conditions, and then a lawyer actually thinking about what are your services and drafting appropriate disclaimers and things like that to match it. So I've got a whole suite of templates now. So for various online businesses, like if you're a coach, if you're offering an online course, a membership, subscription box kind of thing, all those different types of online businesses, I've got specific terms and conditions for privacy policies, contractor agreements, like a whole range of stuff. And then I've got some kits where I do if for social media managers, for example, there's a social media manager agreement plus some website terms and conditions, privacy policy. So it's just really like a one-stop shop for the legals that you'll need when you're starting up. And I've tried to make them as user-friendly as possible.
Yes.
I'm always, if somebody does buy them, I'm always here to answer things via email as well. So I think that's kind of quite different when you're buying something, or what everyone does is just copy somebody else's online. You've got really no help desk support, whereas I'm always around to assist.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, why I created them was just to really stick to my goals and philosophy as a business owner, as to serving and supporting small businesses.
Love that. Yeah. And so let's go back to talking about AI. I too love being able to utilize AI in certain parts of business. Do you feel like is that maybe one of the mistakes people in small business could make is relying too much on perhaps what ChatGPT might spit out as a terms and conditions? Like, is that we've got to be a little bit careful in that realm?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So ultimately, yes. So I had a client, for example, she came to me. She was trying to terminate. She was in this contract. She wanted to terminate it. She said, "Oh, I've written a letter on ChatGPT. Can you just check it for me?" I'm like, "Yep, no problem." Read the letter, and it was worded better than I could in terms of like, "Oh, thank you for the business arrangement. It was so great working together, and we had a wonderful time." Blah blah blah. All that stuff was great, but it actually didn't terminate the contract. There was
Oh,
no wording saying the contract is terminated and pursuant to this clause. So although it sounded really great, I'm like, this does not at all achieve what you want it to achieve. So had she sent that to the client, her client or service provider, whoever it was, she actually wouldn't have terminated a contract, but she probably would have stopped paying the fees, and then they would have been billing her for the fees. She would have got into a massive fight about it, thinking she had properly terminated. So it is a bit of a minefield. Look, and if everyone comes to me and they're like, "Oh, I've just written a privacy policy on ChatGPT." I'm like, that's great. But the whole purpose of a privacy policy is to say what data you personally as a business operator are getting and how you are managing that data and what systems you're using and what third parties you're giving it to or getting the information from. And ChatGPT, as amazing as it is, it can never know these things unless you tell it. And people aren't
Yes,
telling it because they don't know they're supposed to do it. So it's helpful, but you can really come unstuck using it unless you really have the legal knowledge of the questions to ask it or the information to input it. Into it.
absolutely. Yes, I completely agree. And I guess I'd love to know, and this is probably going to be a question that's bigger than Ben Hur, but in your experience working directly with a lot of small businesses and probably a lot that are in startup or in the first, that new sort of period of starting their business, what are some of the bigger mistakes or the more general mistakes do you see small business owners make?
So probably the biggest one is more around branding and marketing, and it's still legal. So everyone who's half smart, when they start a business, they're going to look if the domain name is available, and they're going to check their Instagram handles. Hopefully, they would also look to see if the company name or the business name is available, because you have to register a business name. If you don't register a company, you need to register a business name to start a business with ASIC. And that's a super easy process. Everyone can do it themselves, but you really need to do that. But the business name register, it's really like you can have different iterations of the same name registered. So my firm is called Law by Design. I'm sure if somebody tried to register Law and Design, that might get through. So that somebody might go and register Law and Design and start trading and thinking, life is great. I am going to find out, and I have being a smart business person and smart lawyer, I have a trademark. My business name is trademarked. I am going to quite quickly send that other firm or business a cease and desist letter saying your business name is too similar to my registered trademark and you are not allowed to use it. So I don't care if you've been operating for 6 months, a year, 10 years, I have the trademark.
Yes.
I ultimately hold this trump card. You've got to rebrand. And I would have every right to do that as a trademark owner. So what my fictitious business owner failed to do, and what I would say 95% of people I know fail to do, is check the trademark register.
Yes.
Even if you're not going to register a trademark, like obviously I highly recommend that you do, but even if you're not going to and you don't have the funds to register the trademark,
Yes.
check the trademark register for something that is similar to your name. It doesn't have to be the exact, obviously if it's an exact match, you can't go there, but anything that's kind of similar, just do not go there, because I've had quite a few clients that have been trading for a number of years come to me saying, oh, I've got this cease and desist letter because I'm operating this beauty business that has a kind of similar name to this other company, and I didn't realize it at the time, and now they're telling me to change my name. And I'm like, no, what? Not much we can do. Like, we can fight it. We could spend $200,000 in legal fees trying to argue, but like ultimately you should have checked first. And
Yes.
so, and it's really easy to check on IP Australia as well.
Yes.
So it gets a little bit complicated with the classes, but we can leave that to a different discussion. But check the trademark database is my number one priority before you choose
Jeez.
your business name, because the ASIC business name register will let you register anything basically unless there's an exact match already done.
Yes, I love that advice. And when you were our industry expert inside Bold Aligned Business back in February, you touched on that with the members, which was so valuable. And we actually had, I know of absolutely definitely one that got off your session and went straight on and actually registered her trademark and started the process.
Yeah,
And that was just, it was a big eye opener for a lot of the members in there, in the importance of that, and kind of probably a little bit of the confusion, because what you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
But thinking they've done the right thing, registered their business name, got their all of their handles, got their domain, away we go, and just having that missing piece of the puzzle. And as you said, majorly costly, whichever way you look at it. Like if you want to try to fight it, that's going to be costly. But of course, rebranding and doing all of that is costly and time consuming and high stress. All of that is a high stress situation. So I love that, is making sure that you check the trademark. And I would be saying, even if you've been in business for a long time, go on and check and see whether or not you can secure it yourself if it isn't already secured as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. And look, I've had people, firms come to me saying, "Oh, I want to start a firm that is similar in branding to yours. So just could you please rebrand?" And I'm like, "Excuse me." Sorry, you haven't started business. I haven't registered trademark. I've been trading first. Like, absolutely not. So people will, and I'm a lawyer. I know my rights.
Wow.
Why are we having this conversation? So people will try anything on to try. And if you're not confident in your knowledge and your understanding, you might think, "Oh my gosh, I've got to rebrand." But look, if you've got a registered trademark, well, you can just wave that in their face with any number of fingers and tell them to go on their merry way, because you hold that.
You hold the trump card, yeah. I just find that fascinating that someone would come to you who is already a lawyer that owns the trade. I just find that mind-boggling.
Yeah,
anyway, it takes all sorts, right? It takes all sorts. If someone was starting out in business or early in their business journey, and we've now gone through, ensuring that trademark and all of those branding type things boxes are ticked, what are the next kind of non-negotiables that you would say a business owner needs to actually go out and get advice on or buy templates for to start their business?
Yeah, so if you're an online business, you want terms and conditions. So if you have I'm not doing myself or any lawyer trying to out of work, but if you've got a website which is informational only, you don't sell anything, you don't take any bookings, you don't do anything, it's just like a storefront, then the terms and conditions are important, but they're not as important as if you are offering any kind of service through your website, you're selling anything through your website, you're taking bookings, and you really do want terms and conditions. I love to talk about, and lawyers generally love to talk about, and I know, Kell, we discussed this in February, but having a liability cap if you're providing any kind of goods or services, it's so important. So a liability cap is wording in a contract or your terms and conditions which puts a cap on how much you can be sued for. So you've got an upper limit. Let's say you have a membership group and things are going well, you've got all these members, everything's great, and then you have a guest speaker come on, like old Heidi Warren comes on, and she's had a really heavy night on the drink and says something that's totally wrong, and your members can go off and rely on it, and then next minute they're being sued or they're losing money because of this terrible advice that had been given via your membership. This is why you want a liability cap, this wording that says, okay, well, we know sometimes things can go wrong. We do our best to make sure everything is perfect. And, we're not saying we're going to do anything wrong, but in the event something does go wrong and my client, my members, the customers, they lose money because of something that happened within my services, then you can sue me, but only up to a certain level. And that level used to be easily, we would say, well, you can sue me for the fees that you've paid me. So that might be $1,000, might be $10,000, but that was the limit. Unfortunately, the legislation's tightened up at the end of last year, and it makes that one times fee cap a bit more difficult to achieve, and we need to give a bit more thought into it. So I generally now think, well, maybe 3 times fees is a little more appropriate, but for it, I don't want to get too complicated, but that metric does need a little bit of thought and a legal mind to go over it.
Yes.
But let's say it's 3 times fees. So I'm using you, Kell, as an example. Let's say your membership is $1,000 a year, then ultimately your clients would be able to sue you for $3,000. And you know in your mind, okay, well, look, worst case scenario, I'm going to get a claim and it's going to be $3,000 because that's all they can sue me for. If you didn't have that, if you didn't have terms and conditions, or if you didn't have that wording in your contract, let's say you just copied some T's and C's online, and that didn't have that wording, then your client could sue you for an unlimited amount. So they could have, let's say I turned up drunk to your membership, told everyone there was going to be a financial crash coming and sell your properties. They've gone off, sold their houses, and then there's a huge boom. So they're trying to recover some funds. They could, it's very complicated, but ultimately try and sue you for $1 million that they missed out on the sale of their house. So the terms and conditions that I draft specifically protect you from these kind of crazy, really high claims. And without that wording, you have no protection, basically.
Okay, that's super valuable to know. And I would suggest that probably in the world of copying and pasting other people's terms, and maybe, as we said before, in the world of ChatGPT and other AI platforms, that might be something that people don't know and miss a lot.
Or what I see with people are like, oh, I don't understand this, I don't want to do my terms. Get rid of it if they're copying as well. So there's a myriad of ways you could miss that out. And you've also intellectual property protection. So if you're creating especially digital products, or you're doing any kind of designs or anything where you're creating intangible goods, then you really want to have those protected. Or even your course. So if you're running a course and you've got downloads, or you've got videos where people could come back and rewatch them, all of that is your intellectual property, and you want to make sure that always remains your property, and people can't just go and copy it and distribute it online and download it and send it to their friends. So we make sure that it's really locked down in the terms and conditions as well for that, because it's ultimately that's your source of income. And if somebody is coming along and they're just cavalierly posting it all over the internet, you really want a set of terms and conditions you can point to and say, you weren't allowed to do that, and I'm going to sue you.
Very important. So let's say terms and conditions, someone went to your website, found the terms and conditions template, and we're going to buy that from you. Things like that, where we're talking about maximum level to which they might make a claim, is that something that you've written into your template that would cover across the board, or is that something that someone would perhaps need to email you for clarification? Where does that sort of work with the template basis on your website?
Yeah, so I've kind of got I've drafted it it is a little bit tricky. So the that's a problem. But the law that now regulates this is called the Unfair Contracts Term Act,
Yes.
and it used to apply to big businesses. Now it applies to all businesses, and it basically says it is illegal to have any clause in a contract that is unfair in your standard terms. So unfair is where somebody gets an advantage, an unfair advantage over another party. So if you said you can't sue me, never in a million years would a court hold that up. They would say no. There should always be a level of which they should get their money back at a minimum.
Yes.
But now if you the higher we make that cap, the more likely a court is going to enforce it.
Okay.
And it really, kind of veering away from the topic here, but it really depends on the service you're giving as well. So I could be charging $500 to value a property, but those properties could be worth $3 million. So if I get something wrong and somebody's paid $500 for my service, and I say, well, you can only sue me for $500, but I've misvalued something by $1 million, then that's not really fair. So we need to think about, well, what is the client ultimately getting compared to the fees, and try and bridge that gap. But what I've done in my terms is I've got a mutual cap in there. So both parties' liability is capped. So there is no unfair advantage either way. So and I've got it as a small cap. So basically I've tried my best to kind of make it as small a cap as possible while making sure that it is not going to be deemed unfair. But it is a little bit tricky. So I do encourage anyone that buys a set of terms and conditions to come and chat to me, and we can have a little bit of a chat about, do we need to amend that liability cap position to make it more appropriate?
Yes, and I guess that's very dependent on what they are actually doing in their business. And that was a great example, because that makes a lot of sense as far as, you're charging a $500 fee, but that could make the client very much out of pocket to a high different level. So love that. I love that. So before we finish up, I would love to kind of delve into you and your life and your running of a business as a mum, and how you navigate that to the best of your ability, which again is probably another really big question. But how do you go, because your children are younger and they're close in age, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Give
us a bit of insight.
How do I do it? Well, I guess probably everyone asks me this all the time, and my answer is generally not very well. But I think we're our own worst critic.
Absolutely.
So as you mentioned at the start, I was obviously working in the law. I was working in London, came back to Australia. We had a family. We had 3 kids quite quickly. I actually had 3 under 3. So my oldest was 2 years, 8 months when I had my youngest baby, which I look back now and I think I can barely even remember that time, to be honest. It's such a blur. But my second child was really easy, which kind of lulled me into a massive false sense of security. But I had, whilst I was kind of doing my maternity leave thing, I did try a few different side businesses. I sold vintage rugs. I was doing some commercial property management. I was kind of keeping my mind active. I renovated and flipped a house. I mentioned before, I'm offline, I'm a manifesting generator. So I
was just about to bring that up. I was like, there's the manifesting generator in you. Yes.
Mine never rests. Much to my husband's disgust, I can tell you that. So I was trying all these things. And then when I was pregnant with my third daughter, I'm like, you know what? I just miss being a lawyer. I know that's what I'm good at. And I want to get back to it. But getting a job in a traditional law firm when I'm 9 months pregnant with my third child, I was probably 6 months pregnant with my third child then, is just it's not going to happen. And I don't
Yeah.
want that. I couldn't possibly have that life either with my kids. So I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll just start my own firm. And I was never intending to like take over the world with Law by Design. I just wanted to create a little space that I could manage, being a mum and being a lawyer. And so I set up the business, the firm. It's quite a lot of admin in setting up a law firm, you might
Mm.
imagine. So I did all that before my third baby, Violet, before she was born.
Wow.
And then she came along because I was like, oh, babies sleep all the time. They're so chill. I'll have all this time during the day to just potter around and, write a few contracts and, chat on the phone. It'll be great. Um, well, Violet came along and disabused me of all of those notions. The whole third child raises themselves. Complete lie. Anyone contemplating a third child, it is not true. From the minute she drew breath, she just made sure the whole world knew she was there and she was not going to raise herself by any stretch of the imagination. So, had I probably known what it was going to be like with three kids, I wouldn't have started my firm when I did.
Okay.
But looking back now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm so glad that I did because honestly, I love what I do. And I work with like a lot of clients, but heaps of my clients are mums and their mums in business. And we just really understand one another. We get each other. And I truly feel like I'm just talking to my friends all day long and just giving them a little bit of advice and help. So I'm really thrilled that I've done it, but during the process, I was questioning myself quite a lot.
Yes.
But the business has grown a lot more than I thought that it would have as well.
Hmm.
And that's been great. But there's also been a lot of learnings along the way. I now realize the value in outsourcing. I've now got a junior lawyer that works for me, so that really
Wonderful.
takes a lot of the pressure off. And bringing on employees is so expensive, but also the what it gives you back in the mental load
Yes.
is so worth it. So it's been difficult. I definitely won't lie, but I guess I'm just lucky that I really love it, and so it's made it worth it. And the days when my kids are in kindy, because they're all still under school age. So I've had them 2 days. I have them home 2 days with me a week, and I have all these great plans that we're going to do all these like crafts and go to the library and sing kumbaya, and then it's literally me yelling at them all day long, telling them to brush their hair or teeth or something. But the days that they're in kindy and I work, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the break, and this is the easy part of my life because like I do love it, and I just connect really well with my clients. So
Yeah.
um, it's been a journey, and a lot of learning, and a lot of late nights. But now I feel like I've only been really operating for 2 years, but I feel like the hard part is behind me,
Yeah.
and I've got a much better rhythm now, and I understand what my clients need more as well. When I first started out, I had a kind of an idea in my head about what the services I would be doing, which is actually
Hmm.
quite different to what I'm doing now. So I've kind of had to pivot and understand what it is the client wants. So I've tried really hard to listen to my clients and then
Hmm.
shift my whole kind of business positioning or my services positioning to account for that. So yeah, but I think ultimately I'm in a very lucky position.
I love that. And look, it sounds like that you've definitely done the hard yards to come out the other side. And I love that you've made some pivots to sort of align the business with what people are wanting,
Mm.
and that you're working with clients that you love and they obviously love you. And, that makes things so much easier as well. You're really in alignment with everything. So I absolutely love that. And I know that the members of Boulderline Business got so much out of your session back in February. I know that that session has been rewatched because it's sitting in our video library. But I just want to say a massive thank you to you for joining me on today's episode. I've learnt a lot, as always, but I will make sure that your website and everything goes in the show notes. So if anyone wants to head over and check out the templates that you have, or reach out and connect with you if they know that they're needing anything from the law side of business, because I just love that you have created your business and your law firm differently, and it is so accessible for small business owners, which is what I'm really passionate about too. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. As I said, everything will be in the show notes. But yeah, I won't hold you up any longer because you've probably got a list as long as your arm.
Yeah, always. But thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And to any of the listeners, please do shoot me an email, send me a Facebook message. I'm always happy to have a little bit of a chat. I do want to try and be, like Kell said, accessible, and take that kind of fear out of dealing with a lawyer. So contact me any way you like, and just shoot your questions at me. I'm always happy to be a sounding board for any small business owner.
I love that. And if I was someone listening, I would be definitely taking you up on that offer. But thank you so much for joining me. And yeah, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Aligned with Kell Quarrell. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Aligned with Kell Quarrell. I hope our conversations have inspired you to be bold in the pursuit of your dreams. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'd be so grateful if you shared it with the business women in your life and took the time to leave a review. Your feedback is like an ice-cold glass of Prosecco, always welcomed and always appreciated. You might even consider giving the show a follow. Until next time, continue to take bold action towards aligning your business with your deepest desires.